So today we're going to go over the foundation and the basics for the Model UN Club. So this is the first week. This is the introduction to Model UN, and here is our agenda. We're going to be going over today. We're talking about the history, and we're also talking about the rules and the basic strategy. We're going to have here for Model UN. If you want to pay attention, it'd be pretty important. So, Arvin, take it away.
So before the United Nations, there was before the United Nations there was a League of Nations, and so as a precursor to the United Nations, the first International Assembly was based off the League of Nations, and it was held in 1921 in Oxford, and they discussed this the state of the island of Rhodes and the legalization of opium. And the structure was exported to Harvard for the first Model UN conference on January 10, 1923, and now in the modern day, 187,500 students in the U.S. practice Model UN. So here we have the purpose and global impact. The purpose of the assemblies are to spur the intelligent youth to understanding and supporting the League of Nations, knowing that many will likely be vital to its continuation in the future.
Go ahead.
This quote was said by Mr. Mahmood, the president of the Oxford International Assembly, to the Harvard Liberal Club.
So when we talked before about the structure of the Oxford Assembly being exported over to Harvard in the United States, this guy, Mr. Mahmood, he's the president of the first assembly in Oxford, and he knows that a lot of universities in the U.S., especially on the Eastern Seaboard, are looking for more sort of competitions to go into, right? So he goes over and convinces them to try to give this sort of international assembly a shot. And this purpose is not so much identical today, because obviously we can't assume that all 187,500 students will go into the United Nations one day, but it is good for building this, because before there wasn't a lot of an idea of, oh, we should sit down and talk about and resolve international disputes. It was more like, oh, you got a problem with me? Okay, let's just go to war then, right? So this idea of the point of the United Nations is to encourage deliberation for international disputes, right? Rather than just violent conflict. Next slide.
Here we have the history and content structure. So the beginning background guides are sent out. Then we have the opening ceremony with an optional guest speaker. Then we have when the committee opens. This is when the actual Model UN assembly starts, and the committee opens is basically like the centering focus point of where people discuss Model UN and when people actually do the conference. And then at the end we have the closing ceremony and awards to conclude the session.
Yeah, so like Arvin said, this is where a majority of the action happens. This is so important that you could completely miss the opening ceremony and you'd be fine. It's just a place where it's a formality. The Secretary General just comes up, says a bunch of stuff that most people drown out. But this is where important things happen, and that's where you get your awards based off of how well you did. And remember, your objective is to get awards. Next slide. So let's talk about how the original structure of the assemblies translates over to modern day MUN. So the original international assemblies held at Oxford and at Harvard, like I said, their purpose was to encourage deliberation over violent conflict, right? And Oxford was the first place to do this, where they had two topics that they would open with, like we were saying before, the state of Rhodes and the opium. Today, there's a lot of committees. So we've got ECOSOC, SpecPool, SOCUM, all like jumbled up acronyms for specific topics that each committee will deal with, right? So SOCUM deals with social and cultural issues, SpecPool deals with political and decolonization issues, et cetera, et cetera. And in the background guide, you will receive from the competition before you go. It will give you 2 issues, right? So again, it's 2 topics per committee, and you will actually vote on it once you get into committee, and that will be the one issue you focus on for the duration of that conference. The original International Assemblies, because they were in Oxford, they were British parliamentary style. What I mean was that there was like a president and there were speakers lists, and this sort of thing translates over today in that what you'll have like a giant ballroom, and you'll have your Secretary General of the committee sitting up there. You'll have the chair and the co-chairs, and they're just moderators. Their job is to make sure nothing gets out of hand, that everything follows procedure, and to help people out with where we're going. Here, originally they didn't have a lot of time, so they just debated the resolutions and voted. But these days, at some of the bigger conferences especially, you're going to see a resolution debated, and then you might have them merged with other resolutions, and then debated again, and then voted on. And then this is just an esoteric detail. We can move on. So once you get into committee, what is specifically what's going to happen? And it's a bit complicated at first, and you might not understand it totally, but that's fine, because I didn't understand it either. Until you go to your first conference and you experience it, it seems like just a big jumbled mess. So we'll try to make it as clear as possible. So first there's formalities, right? The committee says, who's here, there's roll call, your position papers are due, which is the background guide. You're supposed to write a position paper based off of your country's, remember you are representing your country, theoretical position on this issue, right? Position papers are also mostly a formality. Sometimes there are awards for them, but what you want to do is you want to just lay out your thinking, show the chairs that you have something there, and then they give some self-introductions. Here is where most of the important things happen, right? So first, there's the primary speakers list opens. This is where people debate on which topic we're going to go with. We should go with topic A over topic B because the state of Eritrea feels that, war in the Middle East is a more important topic to discuss than cultural heritage in, South America because X, Y, Z reasons, right? Then they vote on the topic, you pick a topic, and from that topic you open up secondary speakers list. Anybody can go up, anybody can talk about any aspect of the issue, right? Oh, we're going with, the issue of, lasting colonial effects in Africa. Okay, cool. Let's specifically talk about wealth extraction, right? And I'll give a speech on that, 30 seconds to a minute. At any point during the secondary speakers list, somebody can call for moderated caucuses, which is essentially, okay, secondary speakers list, anybody can talk about anything they want to. But if I, as Australia, want to specifically talk about a specific subject and I want everybody else on the same page to debate this topic with me, I can call for a moderated caucus and everybody has to make speeches on that specific issue, right? Every time something happens, just remember, everybody has to vote on it. You're not allowed to open the primary speakers list until everybody's agreed to it. Now, people will agree to it, but every action needs voting and a majority vote. Here's where the important stuff happens. Solution creation, right? After all this yapping and debate, where people say their positions, where people talk about the issue a bit, then you go into solution creation. You have the problem, right? That's the whole premise. You have a problem, and you're trying to create a solution, right? And so you get into unmoderated caucuses. Remember, this is still something you have to motion for, vote on, etc., right? So you get into an unmoderated caucus, and that means nobody has to sit there, nobody has to listen to speeches anymore. You can go out, talk to anybody you want, form teams to create solutions, right? So what you'll say is you'll start writing a resolution, right? And then there's a specific format you need for that as well. And then after everybody's made it, everybody gets back together, everybody debates the resolutions, and everybody votes on it. Again, like I said before, if you're at a bigger conference, they might force you to merge the papers, because if you have like 10 different papers, it's going to take forever to get through. Like all the votes will be split, so they're going to have you merge the papers. And it's very likely the papers are similar a lot of the times, and that's a good premise for merging. And then finally, all the papers are put up to vote. You can vote. If you vote for one paper, yes, then you can still vote for another paper, yes. It's not like you only have one vote, right? They all need to get a certain percentage of the people present and voting to pass. Next page. So, what you're there for, why are you as a delegate there? You're there to get an award, essentially, right? There's a ton of different awards, less so at the smaller competitions, but at the big ones, there's like best speaker, best, I don't know, team leader, best, but the biggest one is best overall, which is also known as gavel, right? You want a gavel, right? Gonna be honest with you, it's really difficult to gavel, right? The best people who do Model UN throughout their high school career might only gavel 2 or 3 times. That's also on account of the fact that you might only have 12 conferences in your whole, high school experience, and that's a lot actually, right? So how do we gavel, right? What you want to do is you want to be a leader in one of the final resolutions. During the non-moderated caucuses, the co-chairs and the chairs, those are the people grading you, right? Those are the people who pick the awards, right? So they'll walk around and they'll say, ooh, I can see Arvin is leading his group, or the delegation of Brazil is really leading his group in creating this solution. Then you have to be a presenter, right? And this is where a lot of this cutthroat stuff in Model UN happens. Because everybody's going to want to present, because everybody wants a gavel. Do you understand? So if everybody wants to present, everybody has to be kind of passive-aggressive against each other, saying, oh no, I think I should present because I actually wrote a lot of the solution, and that's the primary argument you want to make, right? Look at how much of the solution I made. I know what I'm talking about. Let me be part of the presentation, right? And then you also want to have like a minimum requirement is you want to have good speeches throughout. You're only gonna get 2 to 3 speeches during the entire conference, so you gotta make them count, right? At least one or two of them have to be strong, have to be galvanizing. It can't just be another speech. It can't be boring like this presentation is, right? You have to be so much more exciting, right? You have to be shouting at the top of your lungs because you're gonna be in a room 5 times this size, and there's gonna be people in the back that aren't paying attention and that aren't listening, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the basics.
We'll just go up and just do a quick summary of what we just said. So basically, what Daniel was trying to speak was like, what is Model UN? And so basically, we are just trying to solve real-world solutions and real-world problems from different countries' perspectives. So for example, you're debating on like one issue that's chosen, and then you're going to be using that from the perspective of your country. So for example, if you're debating and you're representing China, but you're debating on a nuclear war issue, you're going to go from China's perspective because that's your chosen country. Okay? And then for your team, you will be selected into different committees. So for example, you have a human rights committee, like Daniel was saying, you have a cultural committee, you have like a political committee. And so you basically go from these, you tackle these issues from that committee's perspective, from your country. Okay? And then, and you basically just try to win using arguments and just trying to solve your issue from that country's perspective. That's what you do. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions?
When's the first conference?
It will be towards the springtime. That will be our first conference.
But we're going to
Sign
try
up
to
for that.
and we're trying to
So how do we prepare for the conference?
We will prepare using mock conferences, and so we're gonna have different sort of topics and stuff. And so in the future, next month or something like that, maybe November, December, we're gonna host our first mock conference, and in that we're just trying to decide whether we're gonna give extra credit out to these students for different classes or anything, and that's gonna help prepare you and build you. And we will also give personalized feedback for everyone. here.
We actually did have a discussion with Mr. Hackett this morning. Are any of you at AGS? So basically, it's not going to give you extra credit, if I remember what his summary told me. However, it is one of your field experiences, and it does count to that. And so, it's going to the conference itself. I'm pretty sure not the mock conference counts as one, but if you head to the conference, you will be able to get a field.
It will be from your mock conferences. Once a month, we're going to give a mock conference, for practice and everything. and then from that mock conference, like we're gonna give you like if you attend, we're gonna and you participate, we're gonna give you like any like points, and we'll decide with Mr. Hackett on what like how much we're gonna give. So yeah.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Like, don't just feel free to ask.
If you don't have any questions now, but if you have questions later, just send us an email.
Send us an
or-
email. Send me an email. Anyone here. Okay.
Alright,
Thank you.
Alright, thank
dismissed.
you.
Have the rest